So, I was born and raised in Mongolia, but if you thought that was remote, my grandparents came from the mountainous regions of central Siberia, from a place called Buryatia. I grew up in my late teens and early adult years here in the UK, and sometime after that, in an effort to connect back with my ancestral roots, I became interested in learning the language and culture of my grandparents, Buryat. But through my research, I was shocked to find out that Buryat was actually classified by UNESCO as being an endangered language. It was highly likely that the language will not survive long term. So I realized that if I wanted to learn Buryat, I had to learn it soon. But even then, what's the use of learning a language if you know it's going to die? And will I really have connected back with my roots? It was there and then that I realized I had to do something about this. I've come here today to talk about a major global extinction event that's happening right under our noses, where languages, cultures, customs, and traditions are all dying at an unprecedented rate. We're going through major cultural extinction. But the incredible thing is that this extinction is often going unappreciated and, worryingly, in most cases, completely unnoticed. Ironically, language extinction is the quietest of extinctions. How many languages do you think are spoken in the world today? We are blessed to live in a world where 7,000 languages are spoken, but current estimates suggest that only half will remain alive to the end of the century. Because of globalization, the world is becoming increasingly dominated by a small number of world languages. 40% of the world's population speaks one of only the top 8 languages of the world. And we all know what they are: English, Chinese, Spanish, etc. And this leaves little room for the remainder of the 7,000. What are the reasons for this? Well, in a globalized world, it makes economic sense to learn them. Parents encourage their children to learn global rather than local languages. Global media outlets favor a wide international readership, and business, science, and technology are all spoken through the medium of these world languages. But don't small languages have any value? Isn't there something to be added beside efficiency? I believe there is. So what I want to give you a sense of today is what is in fact being lost when languages die. Why should we care if languages die? There are many reasons, but today I'll give you just 2. The first reason why language death is worrying is that when languages die, we lose an incredible opportunity to understand our human psyche. Languages aren't just ways of communicating, they're ways of thinking as well. And I'll give you a few examples to show you what I mean. A small tribe in the Amazon rainforest, known as the Piraha, don't have words for defined numbers like 1, 2, and 3. Instead, they use words like many or few or not a lot to describe quantities. Many people have been out to the Piraha and tried to teach them how to count, but all attempts have been unsuccessful. It turns out that if your language doesn't have defined words for numbers, your worldview works without them. Isn't that incredible? I think it is. Or what about colours? The language of the Himba tribe in Namibia has many words for different shades of green, but it uses the same word for blue as it does for a certain shade of green. Interestingly then, the people of the Himba tribe are unable to distinguish between blue and green, but they can distinguish between many different shades of green that they have words for. Again, it turns out that if your language doesn't have words for certain colours, then your worldview works without them. And what about time? You'd think surely everybody has the concept of time. The Amandoa tribe in the Amazon have no words for time or year, past, present, or future. These people do not refer to the past or future, but they live in the present. And again, even with something so fundamental to the human existence as our passage through time, if your language doesn't have the linguistic capacity to describe time, then your worldview works without it. These people have something that we simply cannot comprehend. And if we didn't know all this, then we would assume that the world is how we see it. But language isn't just a vehicle for communication, it's a different way of seeing the world. How many ways are there then of viewing the world? And how human Really are we, if we only understand one way of being human? The important thing for language conservation is that we're barely scratching the surface of what these and other languages can teach us about a collective human psyche. If they die now, we'll simply never know. This is what Margaret Mead, the cultural anthropologist, worried about the most. Her greatest fear, she said, was that as we drifted toward a more generic worldview, not only would we see the entire range of the human imagination reduced to a narrow modality of thought, but that we would awaken one day, as if from a dream, having forgotten that there were even other possibilities. The second reason why language death is worrying is that with language loss inevitably comes the loss of a culture and a tradition that have been part of a people and a way of life for thousands of years. Languages encapsulate a community's history and a large part of its cultural identity, and it is culture, ladies and gentlemen, that makes human existence so very valuable. Take the Ainu as an example. The Ainu are a group of marginalized people living on the island of Hokkaido in Japan, where until 1976 they practiced the great art of throat singing. But when the last practitioner of throat singing died, he took the knowledge of the music and the essence of the language along with him. Now the Ainu language is on the brink of extinction, with less than 15 speakers left in the world, and members of the community and outside observers alike all fear that what is left of Ainu culture will also soon disappear. Just 100 years ago, Taiwan had 26 Aboriginal languages. In the last century, 10 have gone completely extinct, and many others are now critically endangered. So too are the cultures and traditions that have been passed on from generation to generation for centuries. The time may come, and it is very highly likely that it will come soon, when the island only speaks Chinese dialects and Taiwan's unique cultures are a mere relic of the past. And this is exactly why I wanted to learn Buryat in the first place. I didn't want to just learn the language, I wanted to learn the culture and traditions that are part of any heritage. But this feeling of ownership or sentimentality toward a language needn't be owed to one's personal ancestry, like mine was with Buryat. We are all part of the human race. So to some significant extent, we all have a shared ownership of a collective human heritage into which we're all born. And like all ownership, that is a great privilege, but also a great responsibility. Imagine tomorrow if the ancient buildings of Greece were destroyed or the Incan temples disappeared. Wouldn't that be a shared loss? Not just for the people of Athens or Peru, but for society as a whole. Just last year, ISIS invaded the ancient city of Palmyra and began destroying some of its artifacts, much to everyone's disgust. And I remember watching an interview with a local Syrian man who was lamenting the loss of his culture, and he was explaining to the journalist what it meant that his culture was being destroyed. He tried to explain to the journalist by imploring him, imagine, he said, imagine if this was your loss. What a shame that he feels that he has to explain this to us, because in reality, the world felt his loss. This loss was not just limited to the people of Syria, but this was a loss for everyone. And I feel this now. Every time I hear that the last remaining speaker of a language has died. We need never to forget that we're running out of time. So how do we protect our languages? This is currently a very active area of academic research, where much is being done to document languages before they disappear. Academics travel all over the world, meeting speakers of endangered languages, record their conversations and write them up for safekeeping. I witnessed this as a student myself, but I quickly realized that this alone won't save languages. For the way you conserve endangered species is not by collecting them for display in a museum, but by making sure that they are able to procreate. Similarly, the only way you can save languages is by getting more people to speak them. It's as simple as that. And it is on this basis that I founded Tribalingual. Tribalingual is an online language learning platform that teaches rare and endangered languages. We teach languages like Ainu and Sakizaya, one of the Aboriginal Taiwanese languages that are currently listed by UNESCO as being critically endangered. Through a mixture of online audio and visual course content and personal Skype sessions with the language instructor, you're able to immerse yourself in not just the language, but also the culture of these communities. So we're teaching people not just the language or the grammar or the words to make up sentences with, but we're teaching them the customs of the place, the stories, the songs, the poetry. We're giving them an imagery of an almost untouched world that still retains its beauty. We do this by seeking out speakers of these languages, often from secluded parts of the world, and teaching students that are based all over the world. At Tribalingual, our students aren't just our customers, they are champions of our mission. We're empowering a global community of students to preserve endangered languages and cultures. It's funny how great problems lead into great opportunities. While I see this as one of the most troubling issues affecting the modern world, I feel blessed to be taking a part. I'd be honoured if you joined us too. Thank you.